Hello. Today I'll be looking at the Slack internal API. I use Slack daily. It's really interesting for me to look under the hood and see how it works. So as usual, I loaded the Slack Android app to my Android emulator, and I'm also using Proxyman to proxy the traffic and look at the API. And I have to say, this is really a nice API. This is a beauty. It's really well built. It's really well documented. One of the more interesting parts is that they actually use the same API for the app as the public external API, which is something really interesting. Not every company can do that, but if you have a really well built API, you can do it. The thing is, you have to be really cautious when you change things because it's not only your internal API, it's a public API that is used by your customers in many ways that you don't know. And it saves a lot of maintenance. So many companies have different APIs for the internal API and the external API. But if you can unify them, it will save you a lot of maintenance work and testing work. So everything is really self-explanatory. You can see the documentation on their website because it's basically the same with just a few simple nuances. So everything is really well documented. And I've noticed a couple of interesting things. So one of the more interesting bits is, for example, the post message. So you see that it sends a client message ID, which I looked for. Maybe it's being returned by any other API, but I couldn't find it. And then I learned that they basically generate a UUID on the client side for every message they create. And that's interesting. It makes you wonder, will we ever encounter a collision between the two UUIDs? Because if you generate them on the client side, you don't know they're unique. But that's actually not really a big concern. If you Google up UUID and the chances for collisions, you'll see that only after generating 1 billion UUIDs every second for the next 100 years, you'll get like really high probability for collision, and that's not a big concern for them. They're generating about, from what I Googled, 1.5 billion messages every month, and still they're really far from getting a UUID collision. So not a big concern. Once you get these APIs and you can load them into any tool, you can basically play with them and run them. I just loaded the post message and then delete message to LoadMill. It's really simple. It's really fun. You can just play with it. You can send the message. You can see that the message is created, and then you can delete it. It's really fun. You can tweak and play with it. Really interesting. One of the interesting bits I noticed that usually you delete the message by ID. Slack are using the timestamp to delete the message. So basically, the ID for every message is the timestamp. Also interesting if there are possible collisions here, but also I don't think it's a big problem. So that's it. Feel free to write me and ask me to analyze any other app, and have a good rest of your week. Bye bye.